Herb. Herb is a plant. I mean, herbs are good for everything. Herb.
Welcome to Eugene Cannabis TV. You made the trip. You got Reverend Will here and DanK, and we're here to talk about some news stories about cannabis and freedom. I guess that sums it up, doesn't it? Cannabis and freedom.
Yeah.
Measure 80 is, well, the election, this episode is being shown. The polls are closed and we're watching the counting, so we can't predict what will happen, but we can always hope.
Well, personally, I say, start the party. There's going to be legalization here in Oregon, and we didn't do it by buying or convincing other people to vote for us. We did it just by connecting the people who believe that it should be so.
Yep. It's like Danbo used to say, the government doesn't have the right to say that it's illegal, so therefore it is legal.
Right. I mean, their whole thing is based on a lie, so why would you want to put support behind that? I mean, look, they don't care about our state. I mean, they come in here and they bust people randomly, you know, after spending all this money to investigate them, when all they had to do is come up and knock on the door and we'd have told them, yeah, we do this. This is what we do. We take care of each other. That's what this is all about. So I guess we're going to get going on this, the Oregon measure.
Yeah, well, I was going to just tell briefly, it was the latest poll. It's showing that 49 opposed to 42% in favor. So it's not a good poll. So we'll have to see how it goes. What we're hoping is that people that don't normally vote will register. We'll have registered to vote and we'll vote on this. So I'm hoping that silent majority will come and carry us over the top. That's my hope.
Right, well, it's like they say, you know, Oregon's Measure 80 is the most radical, calling for outright repeal of the state's marijuana laws and the creation of a commission to oversee the commercial cultivation and distribution of marijuana. It is also the least well-funded, and we're proud of it, because we're not going to spend our money to try and convince people who don't want to know the truth about this thing to change their vote. We're just working on connecting all the people who do believe that we have the right to have this as our medicine, spiritually, physically, and recreationally. Also industrially, you know, which is a big one that people just can't seem to grasp how much we could be doing here. And that's for fiber, that's for fuel, that's for clothing, food. All these different things could be manufactured here in this state, making us money and putting people to work. So it also, it says, you know, while Colorado and Washington are seeing multi-million-dollar legalization campaigns, the big money donor has stayed out of Oregon. You know, the reasons that they give, like the fact that Paul Stanford couldn't come up with enough money to put this out, well, I'm glad, because Paul has put so much money out for the things that he has done for us. That's medically in other states, setting up clinics and things, and you know, doing what he could to get this on the ballot in the first place. Man should not have to cover all of this, and we couldn't get other people to do it because they needed more help in Colorado and Washington. Hopefully we will see how that pans out. Hopefully it'll pan out in our best interest.
Yes, that's my dream, is if we could make it on the ballot without these people's help, that would be a real feather in our cap.
And now making it legal without their help.
Yes.
So, and there's a key demographic here that I wanted to talk about, and that was that it says that while men split almost evenly on the issue, a majority of women, 52%, oppose it, while only 37% support it. That's real interesting to me, but I can understand it, because when you have to fight to get your input into your doctor, men are more willing to fight to get that information into them than the women are. Okay, because, you know, I have no idea why women back down in this process, but they really don't put forth their best. I mean, like fibromyalgia is a classic example. You know, that for years women have talked about the pain and the suffering that they go through continuously and how marijuana helps them to be able to deal with that. And yet, for the longest time, doctors didn't even acknowledge the existence of fibromyalgia, period. So when you got to fight to get your illness recognized in the first place, and then fight in order to be able to get the medication that helps you the most, you get tired of fighting.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So, I don't know, other than that, it's just a thing where we believe, and we're ready to start the party. So, for anybody who believes in me, we should be partying for 2 days already by the time we get on the air.
Yeah, you bet.
I like that.
Yeah.
All right, so we also have information about
Yeah, the Colorado measure hit 53% in the new poll.
woohoo!
Yeah, this is Colorado's Amendment 64 marijuana legalization initiative. 53% of respondents saying they would vote for it. Only 43% were opposed and 5% still undecided.
Let's swing that 5% and make it almost 60%.
Yeah,
That'd be great.
Yeah. The number is up slightly from recent polls, one of which had the measure leading by a margin of 48 to 43%. The second recent poll had the measure at 50 with 40% opposed. So, what had begun to appear as shrinking support among women voters in those two recent polls appears to have reversed in this latest poll.
There we go.
It was women supporting Amendment 64 by a margin of 50 to 46%.
Oh.
I seem to remember somewhere they said that actually the women were instrumental in ending the alcohol prohibition.
Well, you know, it's just like right now, this is the 100-year anniversary of women getting the right to vote here in Oregon. And I know that for myself, I have definitely had to tell some of the women in this state, how do you think those women felt with you not voting? Think about it, ladies. You fought hard for the right to vote. You fought hard for the right to be an equal. And yet when it comes down to something that's important like this, you bail. I don't understand that. So let's hope that changes and that this is significant in how it's going to work in Colorado and how it could be working in Oregon.
Yeah.
Have to wait and see.
Yep, wait and see, definitely.
We'll know by next week.
Yeah. Yes, especially Thursday morning viewers will really know by then.
Yeah.
So, yeah, anyway, we hope for the best. The campaign to regulate marijuana like alcohol is pulling out the steps as election day draws near. So, anyway, as we're speaking now, we're still rolling forward and hoping for the best. So.
Well, you know, it's like they said here, that the well-funded campaign in Colorado is running 2 TV advertisements and a radio ad featuring Melissa Etheridge. It also had actress Susan Sarandon doing robocalls to still undecided voters. 2 women I have ultimate respect for. So I really appreciate it, Susan. I really appreciate it, Melissa. Understand. We really need your support, and we appreciate it.
Definitely. And so it's, yeah, we get celebrities, they get to draw more attention than
Right.
common folks. So that's great.
So now the new YouGov poll.
Yes, and again, this is a new poll. This one's called a YouGov poll, and it's saying that 59% of respondents nationwide support legalizing marijuana, with 51%, 51% saying they want it legalized, taxed, and regulated, and another 8% saying that if legalized, period. Anyway, only 26% legalization, while another 15% were uncertain. Excuse me.
Well, the YouGov results show stronger support for legalization than other polls. Most famously, a Gallup poll that showed support breaking 50% for the first time ever. Other polls in recent months, including ones from CBS News and the Pew Research Center, had support for legalization at 40% and 45% respectively. So all these are saying that we basically have the ability to do this, to make this legal, especially if everybody that can vote gets out and does vote. So that's the whole key. We are here the night before the election ends, and we are hoping and praying that we don't have to listen to this kind of report, which is the FBI reports that more than 1.5 million drug arrests last year, 1.53 as a matter of fact, which is actually down from the year 2010, which was 1.64 million people were arrested on drug charges. That still comes out to a drug arrest every 21 seconds and a marijuana arrest every 42 seconds, according to Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, or LEAP as they're known, which took the release of the report as an opportunity to criticize 40 years of failed war on drug policies. Speaking of that, I still want to know why we have not been given Geneva Convention privileges in this process. And if you're going to declare war on us, we have a right to be protected by the Geneva Convention. Even excluding the cost involved for later trying and then imprisoning these people, the people should not be imprisoned in a jail. They have to be imprisoned in an internment camp because they are not committing crimes against people, they're committing crimes against the state because they don't agree with the state and they're standing up, and basically they're all heroes in my book. I don't care if their intent wasn't always as pure as it could be. The fact that they would stand up to the government is what veterans are supposed to do when the government's out of line, which it is. So for all you vets out there, let's pull it together and make a difference so that our brothers and sisters make sure that they have something that will help them not to remember all the crap and all the things that they had to put up with overseas.
Definitely. Yep. Yeah, that's, yeah, I remember when I first became an activist, I found out in Alaska when cannabis was legal, then it was illegal, and then it went back legal again. They checked at the statistics and found that, well, pot was legal and then went illegal, the crime rate went up. And when pot was legalized, the crime rate went down again.
Well, see, that's what they're saying. No other single crime category generated as many arrests as drug law violations. Mm-hmm. The closest challengers were larceny at 1.24 million arrests, non-aggravated assaults at 1.2 million, and DWIs 1.21 million. All violent crime arrests combined totaled 535,000, or slightly more than 1/3 the number of drug arrests. And then you don't have a place to put them because you got the people who are being arrested for drugs in jail and you're letting the violent criminals and stuff out. Folks, you don't make any sense to me, but you know, why should you have to make sense to me?
Yeah, that's it. And just the problem they talk about crime and drugs. Well, the thing is why they're so expensive is prohibition. That's the whole reason. And yet, they can, you know, anyway, it's a mess. So, yeah, we're going to wrap up this segment. We've got to move on here to the next one. So we got to get ready here. So we got to rest up for the next run.
Did you see that?
Herb. Herb is a plant. I mean, herbs are good for everything.
And we have an interesting story, part of an ongoing story. A while back, the Dutch government decided that they were getting a bad press, a bad reputation from all this pot smoking going on in the country. So they decided, a great idea, that they were going to limit it to residents only. So the headline is, the Dutch government nixes the plan to bar foreigners from coffee shops. There will be no national weed pass for marijuana consumers in the Netherlands. The Associated Press has reported that the new Dutch coalition government has agreed to a provisional governing pact that kills the weed pass plan proposed last year by the then ruling Conservatives, but gives cities the option of banning foreigners from the country's famous cannabis cafes. With the weed pass proposal, foreigners were to have been banned from the cannabis cafes nationally as of next year, and Dutch nationals would have been required to register with the state to obtain a permit, the weed pass, to be able to purchase marijuana at the cafes. The plan had already gone into effect in some border cities. It was touted as reducing drug tourism and associated nuances in border towns. But since it was put in place in selected border towns, some cannabis cafes have closed in protest, while reports of increased street dealing have been on the increase. Duh.
Duh.
Yeah. Under the governing pact between left-leaning Labor and the conservative VVD, the government says it wants only Dutch citizens to have access to the cafes, but leaves enforcement up to the cities. The city of Amsterdam, among others, has already rejected the Wheat Pass idea, saying it would hurt tourism. Some cannabis cafe owners told the AP they were satisfied that the country's policy of pragmatic tolerance toward cannabis will remain intact, but others said the proposed deal lacked clarity. So it's interesting how came all this anguish over a plant, you know.
Speaking of which.
Yes, and we have an interesting court case coming up in the Supreme Court. A Florida case involving the use of a drug-sniffing police dog will test the limits of the Fourth Amendment. Since the Supreme Court has said that at the very core of the Fourth Amendment stands the right of a man to retreat into his own home and there be free from unreasonable government intrusion. The court's commitment to the sanctity of the home will be tested Wednesday by a case featuring as familiar a symbol of domestic life as the family home itself, a dog. Only in this case, the dog was not the householder's best friend, but the police officer's. The justices will decide whether police committed an unreasonable search when, acting on an anonymous tip, they deployed a drug-sniffing laboratory retriever named Frankie at the Miami area home of Jolis Jardins. The dog sniffed around outside the front door and gave the police the signal they were looking for, on the basis of which they obtained a warrant and a search discovered marijuana. Jardins was charged with trafficking in more than 25 pounds of marijuana and stealing the electricity needed to grow it. Yeah, that's another thing about the drug sniffing dogs, is that it's been proven that they can actually have the dogs trained to alert when they want them to, just by on how they talk to the dog.
Right, the dog responds to the commands of the owner. That's the bottom line as far as police tactics go. But see, police have never given herb the respect that it deserves. That's the whole problem, is that they just listen to the federal government that says that it's bad, and the federal government has no proof. I mean, we've shown that before with all the things that we've shown, from how they had the companies going in and trying to find bad things about pot that they couldn't even find, so they couldn't come back and make it worse than what they were saying. So, I mean, it's just one of those things where we get the short end of the stick.
Oh yeah, definitely. And so it'll be interesting to see how this turns out. It'll be quite some time before we hear the result of the ruling, but it'll be interesting to see. I'm about half afraid to look with our Supreme Court, you know.
Well, you know, part of that is just like one of the reasons that people in Washington, some of them are concerned about the 0.5 or whatever it is that they're talking about using as a standard for being able to implement the DUII. Mm-hmm. Well, understand, I just heard on the radio just a little bit ago that they're talking about, or I read right here, where they're talking about how even if you blow below a .08 for alcohol, you can still get a ticket for DUII. It doesn't mean that just because you blow less that you're not going to get that ticket. So what good does the .05 or the .08 in the alcohol or the weed world mean if a cop can overrule it and say, well, I feel that you are drunk?
Yeah, I've never understood that either. They say so in ads. Just because you blow below .08 doesn't mean you won't be charged with being impaired. I don't know. I do know about the DRE, the drug recognition expert, and that's a whole other thing.
All right, I can look at you and tell what drugs you've been using. Oh, let me feel you.
Yeah, go on the internet, the search engine, and look up Oregon DRE and read that.
Right.
It is scary, and it's happening now.
So we have this article here is the article you wanted to get to about the 10 of the harshest sentences for pot in the U.S.
Yes, and this is from the 420 magazine, internet 420magazine.com. Most Americans want pot to be legal, but as many as 70% of Americans want to legalize it for medical use. Nonetheless, the war on pot rages on. The Obama administration has actually increased raids on state-sanctioned medical pot programs, prosecuting both patients and the providers. Medical pot defendants have little protection in the justice system, which denies as evidence mention of their marijuana prescription or state-sanctioned use. A review of some of the sentences over the past few decades, punishments that plague individuals for decades, even after release, reveals the injustice of the drug war. Here's a rundown of the people who received the harshest penalties handed down for pot in recent history.
Once again, now we're talking about drug war. Okay, when you are declaring war on a people, those people have the right to be protected by the Geneva Convention.
Right. The first one is Christopher Williams. A Montana medical marijuana provider is facing 82 to 85 years behind bars due to mandatory minimum laws linked to some of his charges. Convicted of crimes like manufacturing marijuana, intent to distribute, and possession of a firearm during a drug trafficking offense. There's one they nailed him with. Christopher Williams appeared to be in for the worst, but in a rare move, this September, U.S. Attorney Michael Cotter offered to drop 4 of Williams' charges and bring his sentencing down to as little as 10 years, as long as Williams waived his right to appeal. Williams refused the offer on moral grounds. The case isn't about medical pot, says Williams, whose judge prohibited discussion of Montana's medical marijuana program at the trial. Rather, he says, it is about government's abuse of power. I have decided to fight the federal government because for me, not defending the things that I know are right is dishonorable.
Remember, hear that, veterans. Hear that.
Yep, read that again. I have decided to fight the federal government because for me, not defending the things that I know are right is dishonorable. Williams wrote to the Independent Record, every citizen has a responsibility to fight for what is right, even if it seems like the struggle will be lost.
I see, I honor this man so much for saying this because I've gone to the ACLU in this state and I've asked for their help with the discrimination practices that are going on here by the federal government, by the state government, by the city and county when they do not help us, because that's what's supposed to be done according to this law, is to help us get our medicine. And that's not happening.
Says Michael Donahue, Williams' attorney, said the federal prosecutors often bring gun charges against medical marijuana defendants without the intent to prosecute them. Rather, they are hoping for a plea bargain, one Williams is not willing to take. We know this for 2 reasons, Donahue told the Missoulian. First, because the government readily agreed to dismiss the firearms counts for virtually every other medical marijuana defendant in those cases where firearms violations had been charged. And second, because insofar as Williams' conspiracy is concerned, every other defendant had no real choice but to plead guilty in exchange for the firearm charges being dropped. Wow.
Number 2 is this woman, Patricia Spotted Crow. Oklahoma mother of 4, Patricia Spotted Crow learned firsthand how a small-time pot bust can completely derail an offender's life. A $31 pot sale excuse me, got her a stunning 12-year prison sentence. In the 2 years she has been incarcerated, she has seen her children only twice. What's more, her good behavior behind bars, including completing her GED and other self-improvement programs, has not reduced the confusing back and forth from the pardon and parole board. There's, you know, Spotted Crow told KFOR TV in Oklahoma, I'm not going to give up until I walk out the gate. I've got my mom and my kids out there waiting on me. Whatever it takes to get me to them, I'm going to do it. I've been doing it. And that concept right there is one of the things that we have to deal with when we're facing charges like this. So the next one.
Yeah, Jonathan Magby. Jonathan Magby's story is a stunning example of the cruelty that can accompany an arrest for medical marijuana. Paralyzed from the neck down after being hit by a drunk driver at the age of 4, Magpie was charged with marijuana possession in 2004 after cops found a joint and a loaded gun in a vehicle in which he was a passenger. Though he had never been convicted of a criminal offense and required medical assistance 20 hours a day, he was given a 10-day sentence in D.C. jail. With no ventilator to sustain his breathing, he died in jail 4 days later.
That's basically murder, folks.
Magpie's current punishment was a death sentence. Without their medication behind bars, pot patients who make it out alive have endured days, weeks, or years without their medication. Even after release, condition of parole, including urine tests, may prevent patients from accessing their medicine.
Robert Platshorn is famous for being a marijuana trafficker, a leader of what the DEA dubbed the Black Tuna Gang. Platshorn spent the mid to late 70s smuggling weed into the U.S. from Colombia before he was busted in 1978. Understand, folks, we don't support this. We don't support people bringing in marijuana from out of the country, but at that time there wasn't the big grow operations that are happening here, and yet we still don't have permission to do it. So he was doing the best he could to help people, although he imported as much as 500 tons of pot. We got to wrap this up, folks. I'm sorry, we just got notified that we ran out of time. So the rest of these, we can tell you, none of them get any better, some of them get worse. So we're going to have to wrap this up right now, and we'll be looking forward to next week.
You bet. In future shows, I'll read some more of these for you, including Will Foster out of Oklahoma, which is a very famous case. So anyway, the injustices go on. Hopefully it'll come to an end on the 6th.
Start the party.
Start the party.
All right.
Yeah, you bet.
Love you, folks. Take care.
You bet. If you want to come down and watch the show Monday at 6:30, come on to the community TV studio. We're out of here. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.